gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for February 6th, 2023. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, terrible news. The worst person you know put out a good video game. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Tom Caswell from GameSpot. Tom, how are you doing?
Good this morning, Jeff. Thanks for having me. This is an excellent morning to be getting messy, getting down deep into the mess.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, you reached out. You're like, hey, we're doing more video stuff at GameSpot. I want to like get out there and like put my face up. I'm like, yes, that sounds perfect. I've been wanting to like connect more with GameSpot people. I'm like, yeah, let's make it happen. So also Mondays are my time when I'm like, I'll get to Sunday night, be like, I got to get someone for Monday's show. And you reached out before the end of the week. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I don't even have to do any more planning.
The perfect guinea pig.
Exactly. But yeah, I don't know. How was your weekend? I beat Hi-Fi Rush, and guess what? That continues to be a very good game through the end, and actually gets better as you go through it. I was really, really happy with it. I like texted Jan. I'm like, Jan, I think you have to play this because any of these characters are going to be so up your alley. Have you touched it at all?
Yeah, totally. It's totally my game. I have been waiting for an action rhythm game to actually deliver on both fronts. And from what I've played, it does. And I've also heard the same thing that like it just gets better as it goes, and totally see that from I'm in the volcanic area, right? And I'm already like, oh my God, I was still unlocking like new different moves. My plan was to beat it this weekend because for my I have a podcast called Unranked, little plug there. We do a Game Pass game club
cool.
and that's the game, and I have to beat it for this week. And my plan was, but I have my girlfriend's birthday on Saturday, and Sunday was recovery day. Mm-hmm. I've been playing a little game, actually, just like on my Steam Deck, called Your Only Move is Hustle. Have you heard of this game?
I haven't, but I love a good Steam Deck rec.
Yeah, it's $5. It's on Steam. It works on Steam Deck, but obviously you can play it on PC. It totally feels like this year's Vampire Survivors.
Oh, okay.
It is a very kind of, it's literal stick figures on a grid, like an XY axis grid. It is if chess were a fighting game.
Oh, so that sounds awesome.
You have a character. There are 4 character types: ninja, cowboy, wizard, and robot. And they each have different move sets. And the idea is you pick a move and your opponent picks a move, and you lock them in without knowing what the other person picked. The game plays that move and then freezes, and then you pick the next move.
Oh,
and then at the end of
cool.
the game, at the end of the match, it plays out the whole fight. It's called Your Only Move is Hustle. I highly recommend people check it out. It is so addicting, and it has a bit of a learning curve in the beginning, but honestly, after 3 or 4 matches, like you totally understand how to play. And I think it's going to be really big. So get on it now.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy in early.
Be one of the cool kids.
Exactly. That's I'm going to download it on the Steam Deck as soon as we're done here today. Your Only Move is Hustle. That's the name.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right, let's get into this mess. But before we do so, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Dragon Age Dreadwolf gameplay and images leak online. This comes from Tom Henderson over at Insider Gaming. Following Insider Gaming's exclusive report on information about Dragon Age Dreadwolf, this is like an update to the story, by the way, so if this sounds a little confusing, just bear with me here, everybody. One user on Reddit has leaked gameplay footage and images of the game's alpha. Although the original uploads of the files have since been deleted and re-uploads of the footage have not been, or have been found. They have been found. According to the original poster, the footage was posted in response to Insider Gaming's report. Insider Gaming can confirm that the images and footage are authentic and likely originated from a restricted playtest that took place in the last couple of weeks. The reason I lead with that is because we got a lot of details about Dragon Age Dreadwolf in terms of its gameplay out of that alpha. And so we know we can now basically say, oh, that stuff is real. And those details include the following. Combat is completely real time and similar to a hack and slash. I'm told the guiding reference point was the God of War 2018, and that shows in the gameplay. A player has their regular combo attack and then their abilities, as well as a special bar, which generates, allowing you to pull off a special move. Apparently, there's a big comparison to Final Fantasy 15's like wheel, which I also don't fully understand, and Tom says he doesn't understand it here. But it's a standard Dragon Age ability wheel. There was no party control demonstrated. I think it's a safe bet to say you will not be able to directly control your party members in the game. That said, you likely will be able to tell them to execute certain abilities, but apparently that was locked off in the alpha. The most immediate thing you noticed is the animation quality, which has drastically improved. Like for any other AAA title, it's probably not that big of a deal, but we've never seen animation quality this good in any BioWare game. Most of that sounds promising. I think that maybe there are some Dragon Age fans are hearing that and getting a little bit worried, though. I saw some response to this being like, hey, real-time hack and slash God of War combat is not what I come to Dragon Age for. But I just wouldn't be surprised at all if it goes in this direction. And at the same time, this was an alpha, right, Tom? So this is pretty early and things could change. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. I think that it's interesting that I'm trying to find, I was like trying to find the footage because we were talking about it, and I didn't know if there was anything out there beyond what I had seen. I saw like a GIF and like a bunch of images. I think it's hard to think that, like, say that the animations have drastically improved from like the 5 seconds of gameplay there.
Yes.
That being said, I know personally this speaks more to my tastes. I think that the idea behind this, that BioWare is thinking, is like, we've had a couple of rough years, right, with Andromeda leading into Anthem, and now like a huge gap before our return to our beloved franchises. They're probably thinking, how do we skirt the line of creating a game that Dragon Age players are going to love, but also appeals to a bigger audience? And, you know, it's making a game that has God of War mechanics, but the RPG nature of Dragon Age, like, that sounds amazing. And if they can nail it, it has the potential to be huge. I think it's obviously very hard to kind of surmise like where a game's finally going to net out based on something like this. But I think that from a direction for the game, this is probably the best direction they could go. Dragon Age fans obviously love those games. There's a lot that puts a lot of the general masses off from a gameplay standpoint. And I think, honestly, this is, if they can nail it, this is a smart move for them.
Yeah, I think that they are in a position these days where you can keep putting out Dragon Age games and Mass Effect games, BioWare, although maybe you're on a bit of a short leash, and actually these games do need to hit pretty well when they come out. Maybe better than they've ever hit before, or at least better than your games have hit in the most recent attempts. And so I think under those circumstances, it makes all the sense in the world that a developer looking to put out a game that is still Dragon Age, but that can reach the next level of success, and in a way that maybe it couldn't have before, they are looking at ways to like shift up the combat, shift up things so that they are as broadly appealing as possible. I mean, of course, that we've seen Final Fantasy did that, so nothing's sacred. Of course, Dragon Age is going to try that, but they're going to be in a situation though where this is still going to be a tough needle to thread because you're going for God of War combat. God of War combat's pretty well liked, pretty beloved. And you gotta, if you're gonna go for that, it needs to be pretty good, and so that's still gonna be difficult to accomplish. I think here though, this is BioWare just being like, hey, we do have to have a hit. I think that's the biggest thing here, because
100%.
I mean, their last couple attempts were actually pretty troublesome, and at least according to EA. And EA is already looking at all their other developers, sort of. I mean, even Respawn. Respawn is Apex Legends, right? It's this huge thing, Titanfall, and now that's the Star Wars studio, and they happen to work on Apex Legends. That just happened, and so wait, what happened? This was supposed to be your star studio, and now they're relegated to being a license house. That just happens. I mean, it hasn't happened with BioWare yet, but it feels like if Dragon Age comes out and doesn't hit, and who knows what happens with Mass Effect after that, but if both don't hit, then they definitely, I think, are going to be completely reworked into something else, and so they know they need a hit. That's where this game is at, and that feels like that's where it's coming from. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the hit. I just want to clarify something real quick. Born Diesel in the Twitch chat says the leak saw 20 minutes of footage. They didn't base it on that animation. So there's footage that they've seen beyond that. So I just want to clarify there. So sure. I mean, look, based on this. What I've seen as well, I'm like, cool, this seems to be going in the direction I want. But yeah, I totally agree. They need a hit. I think you put out a tweet this morning talking about like the base numbers that big AAA games like kind of need to hit to be a success because of the time and money that goes into them. BioWare is like already on the back foot because of 2 huge misses. So like there's even more room that they need to make up for. What I'm just going to be curious about is like, how big I think Dreadwolf is going to be a good game, and I think it will do well. I am very interested as to the scope and scale of that. I'm interested in the climate that it launches in, because it still feels like we're very far out from the release of this game. Like, I don't even know what games are going to be around it that could kind of suck some of the air out of it. And then I'm also very curious as to, I think almost just as important as Dragon Age hitting is kind of like, if Dragon Age hits, will that be enough, a short around time between that and the next Mass Effect launching, that they can actually ride the success to make the next Mass Effect massive. I'm a little concerned that I don't know how they're breaking up like development among the team to work on both games. I think the biggest thing is, no matter what happens with Dragon Age, it can't be cool. We put out a really good Dragon Age game, and now you're waiting another 5 years for Mass Effect. I think it needs to kind of land within a 2-year period potentially of Dreadwolf. So I'm kind of looking at it as like the combination of both games need to hit for BioWare to kind of get out of this mess. Like, one of them can't be a failure and one of them be a success. Like, it's a kind of a dual package for me of like, cool, we're returning to our original franchises that made us the developer that people loved. We've had some misses, and now we're going to kind of bring everything that we've learned, both good and bad, and form these new games. So I think it's a good direction. It definitely needs to be a hit. I think that these changes are intended to execute on that. But yeah, it's almost like, cool, you need to nail Dragon Age. You also need to nail the next Mass Effect. Yeah. And you need to nail both for you guys to be in good footing. And, it's very concerning with the state of gaming. Like, it would be really sad if like if BioWare was not able to kind of dig themselves out of where they're at. And I really hope that they pull it off just for that studio, because it would just be a huge shame. And with the direction that we're seeing with the industry, with big studios, please don't give EA an excuse to like restructure you or like have to do anything there. Like, I mean, it's
what happened with DICE recently after Battlefield 2042. They got restructured because they were on a short leash, and 2042 didn't deliver, and bam, it happened. I saw some skepticism in chat about the Respawn comment being the Star Wars studio. They are the Star Wars. They have 3 Star Wars games in the works. They were working on a Titanfall Legends, and now they're not working on that anymore. They're just continuing to develop Apex Legends. So it's like, this publisher, and really every publisher is like this, where they're looking at any reason to sort of take the reins back over from the creatives at a studio, and BioWare is definitely next on that list. And I think I would have said they were starting at a disadvantage, because apparently Dreadwolf is going. Wait, no, Dreadwolf is Unreal, right? Isn't that what we said? I thought I reported that.
I'm almost certain that it is. Someone in chat can correct us if that's not the case. I can look it up real quick. But yeah, I'm almost certain Dreadwolf is Unreal.
No, they're saying Dreadwolf is Frostbite. I could have swore it was Unreal, but I guess not. All right, if it's Frostbite, that's the disadvantage, because that was always the biggest problem with Frostbite. Was that it is the animation stack, the technology there was so bad that you would go play Anthem and it would look just completely dead. completely sterile. Is it Mass Effect that's Unreal? Can someone look up what I said before? Because I'm like having like a moment here where I'm like feeling completely unmoored.
Yeah, from what I'm seeing, Dreadwolf is Frostbite.
Okay, check and see if I said Mass Effect was going to be Unreal. But so the Anthem was like looked so much worse, even though visually it looked better than any Mass Effect game. But it looked worse because the characters were so stiff and motionless because the animation stack was so bad that they couldn't actually bring life and breathe life into any of these characters. So maybe it's a little bit heartening that even if we are basing this on a limited sample of 20 minutes, that, you know, the animation is actually improved and people are calling that out, because that's a good sign for this game, and that for the developer and that the developers have figured something out to get that animation working.
Yeah, the what I'm seeing from online is that based on like new job listings, Unreal 5 will be the engine for Mass Effect, which makes sense.
That's right.
Which
that's
makes
what it was,
sense.
yes.
Makes sense. You know, I think that EA very late in the game saw that the benefit of using your own engine outweighed the benefits of using a very popular, other engine. They recognized that very late, and it was probably too late to change course on Dragon Age, but they could implement it for Mass Effect. And I think, you know, that's what we're seeing across this industry. You know, when we talk about the 343 layoffs and everything wrong with Halo, it seems that the huge problem is that they just weren't using Unreal or a more popular engine. You know, it's one of the many factors, right? But so that's a little cause for concern, I think, a little bit. Frostbite does not play well outside of historically has not played well outside of its intended use, which was for a very limited scope first-person
shooters and racing games, because it's like racing games, so you don't have to do much with those characters. You could just put the car models in there and go. So, but if they can squeeze, based on what we're seeing here and what we're hearing, if they can squeeze some good action out of it, I mean, I'm very curious. I want to see that 20 minutes of additional footage. Yeah, me too. I'm sure I might see if there's a torrent or something out there, make that happen. But yes, overall here, the story continues to be Dragon Age Dreadwolf is coming along. Yeah. The last I heard, it's like it was always going to be later this year at the earliest, and that was, I always emphasize, at the earliest. This report says it seems like unlikely for this year. I think that's probably right. 2024, though, is still within the realm of possibility, and so we probably should begin to see this game pretty soon. Although, of course, marketing cycles have shrunk to the point where maybe we don't see it until 3 to 6 months before it comes out. But for now, there's footage out there, so we can see something of it. I'm almost certain they start the marketing for this game this year. You got to imagine Jeff Keighley's got his fingers all up in those trailers. Good relationship with them too, right? He's shown BioWare stuff a lot. Exactly. It'll be interesting. Maybe they bring back EA Play and they do like a big blowout reveal for this game. I think 2023. I don't think the game is ultimately going to release this year. But I think that you start talking about it, start showing it off this year. Yeah. Something interesting. Born Diesel again in the chat says Dead Space remake is Frostbite, so that seems to have changed. Yes. Dead Space is actually kind of a perfect, I think, game to make a third-person action game in Frostbite, because he still moves kind of stiffly. The remake is awesome. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But there's no dodging. It's literally just someone kind of walking through a hallway. There's no 180-degree turn. There's a lot that you don't have to necessarily worry about. Whereas with a Dragon Age or Mass Effect, that you're going to probably run into some more complications with the engine there. I don't think throw Frostbite out. I think there's a lot to still of cool stuff that engine can do. Axel Chet says it would be absolutely hilarious if Dragon Age 4 played perfectly and they finally figured out how to use Frostbite well, with them switching on right as Mass Effect. Switched up. But that would be hilarious. I agree 100%. Yeah. But there are underlying reasons why switching to Unreal is the long-term move for so many of these companies. It just makes it so much easier to hire. That's the simplest thing. Everyone learns Unreal. Having the idea of having to bring in someone who's talented, but then having to teach them, get them up to speed. I mean, these companies will do that. They were doing that, but it makes it harder because people are like, well, I already know Unreal, and if I go and learn your weird thing and I leave, I'm just going to have to go back and learn what's changed in Unreal. So I'm going to have to keep up with Unreal anyhow. It just makes it harder to hire. So these companies are making the move. At a certain point, the guitar got figured out, and bands don't make their own guitar for every song they make, right? You just, at a certain point, things change and things get settled into place. And there's there's 2 or 3 camera companies, and everyone uses those, and they don't go out and try to make their own camera every time when they're making a movie. It's that simple. Square Enix is reporting a 7% sales drop from the previous fiscal year. This comes from Kareem Dogan Karakok. In its new financial reports for 2022, Square Enix states that its sales have dropped 7% compared to the previous year's financial period. Despite releasing 35 titles throughout 2022, the Japanese conglomerate was not able to perform better than in 2021, as its games, according to the reports, did not reach the level of the previous year. It hadn't been a great year for Square Enix, as the game giant's HD games like Power Wash Simulator, Star Ocean: The Divine Force, Crisis Core, and more couldn't generate the targeted sales performance. According to the detailed financial reports, the company's HD games subsection also failed to beat the previous year's revenue and saw an 11.3% decrease by producing 58.1 billion yen in net sales, which translates to about 444 million. Now, for me, this story is, Tom, the other side of the story that's been happening over the last couple of weeks with all these live service games shutting down. I think people have seen that, and there's been something of, well, now it's time to get back to business to just making regular games. And I'm like, I want to
regular games.
Yes, exactly. And I want to just stop people and be like, please stop. Please don't think that's going to happen, because there are companies out there doing that, and that's not working either for the most part for them. There are exceptions, obviously, and there are some companies that are really hitting with that stuff, but it's not like it is the answer to what has gone wrong with live service games. The problem with live service games is the problem with traditional games as a product as well. There are too many games out there requiring too much of your time, and just because a few live service games go away doesn't mean that means Fortnite and Apex Legends and a million of World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14. Those games aren't going anywhere, and those games still take time away from games as a product. And then the games as a product, meanwhile, when they come out, if they don't hit, it's just the same. And if they do hit, they have a ceiling to how much money they can make, whereas a live service game could still hit and be this big lotto ticket for some of these companies. Now, I think that means we'll probably still get quite a few live service games. I don't think Sony's going to abandon its live service game initiative, for example. Like, there's no way that's happening.
No.
But like, when you look at a company like Square Enix, do you get a sense of like where the answer is for them beyond, hey, they're probably going to have a good year because of Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a list of everything that they put out in 2022. The biggest games being Triangle Strategy, Final Fantasy Origin being kind of like the main titles, Reunion, right? Which they're all like, not in terms of like scale and scope, but like I would consider like AA in terms of
absolutely.
They're not the biggest games of the year. They're like another tier down. So I just think I do think it is like, Final Fantasy 16 is going to sell amazing. It'll probably carry Square Enix through 2023, no matter what else they put out. What are your thoughts? While we're talking about this, how do you think Forspoken is going to sell?
It seems like it has it's been a disappointment based on the initial numbers, like out of when you look at the PC sales, or at least the PC placement of these games through like Steam database, where Hi-Fi Rush came out and was immediately in that top 10, and then Forspoken wasn't, and then a couple days later, Hi-Fi Rush is still in the top 10, and Forspoken wasn't in the top 100. And Hi-Fi Rush has a PC Game Pass version, so it's like, what's happening here? Maybe most people were going to get Forspoken on PS5. I bet the game is going to do maybe a million. It feels like it's probably it's going to be like a Returnal level success, and then maybe a little bit more because I had a bigger marketing budget, and that's not good enough for a game like Forspoken, right?
Well, and that's the thing, and that's where I come down on your question of like, in this answer to live service games, it's just so hard to compete in that market. A return to games as a product, and like the traps that can come with that simple idea. I think that the answer is kind of twofold. I think that you just need to make smaller games that do what they do very well, market them really well. It could be a Hi-Fi Rush situation, which I don't think works for everything. But if you have a game that looks really cool, you're able to package it into a presentation that has a lot of eyeballs. And, there was just like a perfect concoction for that game. And it felt like we weren't getting anything like Hi-Fi Rush for so long
that it's like, obviously there's a gap in this market for something like that, right? And it's so the fact that they delivered on it really helped. But I think even if that market were to get a lot more entries in there, I don't think it's suddenly going to be saturated. I think you just have to continue finding your own voice when you're making a smaller game. Of course, whenever we talk about this, when we say like smaller games, make more of those. That's what I want. These companies continue to want the biggest bets in the world. It's opportunity cost. Finding a developer is hard enough. If you're and finding the talent is really hard. So when you do put all those pieces together, well, it's time to like really invest and go big, because it just that doesn't feel sustainable anymore. It feels really tough to pull it off. And the answer has been for companies like EA and some others. Big licenses. We're going to get big licenses, but even when Square Enix tried that, they got the Avengers. So it's not an answer,
right? And that to me, like, Avengers is like this game that I wish we could talk more about, because it's like, how does the most popular IP on the planet crash and burn as hard as it did? I understand it had, live service elements, and like that is off-putting to a large majority of gamers, and it may not have been the Avengers game you wanted, but still it failed so tremendously poorly that like it's dead within 3 years. It's so hard. I think that the answer is, just invest in fewer titles and make smaller games. A bunch of people in the chat are saying exactly what I always feel. Make a really good 10-hour game.
God damn.
I think at this point, people's obviously financial situations greatly differ, right? Like, you might only be able to afford a couple of games a year. You might be able to afford every game that you want to buy in a year, right? That being said, I think everyone has the same opinion when it comes to investment of time. I think no matter where you fall on the how much you can actually afford in games spectrum, everyone is so busy with everything, the world, other things. And so I think that investing in smaller scope games, while I don't think it's going to be the ultimate like cure-all answer, every small game you're going to make is going to be a hit, I think that is the best broad approach to a direction for a studio.
Yeah, let me ask you this about this topic, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Actually, got a little small breaking story, but the Hi-Fi Rush was $30. What do you think about that? I think I don't know. A lot of people in chat are saying, I've said this since it came out. Some other people I talked to, $60. I would have paid for that. I mean, I don't get it. Why was it only $30?
Yeah, I mean, I would have paid for that. I think that they just were looking at it as, this is a much smaller in scope game in numerous ways comparative to what a lot of $60 games being put out are. I think that the other thing is like there wasn't a leading marketing campaign. They literally had no litmus test, no kind of, anytime for people who don't understand this, anytime that there is a marketing push, like a new trailer drops or anything like that, there is a team that goes through all of the responses and gets an idea of where consumers are before they continue with the next marketing push. And so they can kind of get and that's how they build like expectations of, we think this game is going to sell this many. Hi-Fi Rush didn't have any of that because no one knew it existed. So I think that they were just playing it real safe.
Cripple Chat says that sounds like a miserable job. Looking through the chats and the comments. Yeah.
It 100% is. It 100% is, always think of your friends in marketing. They're not always having the best of times. So I think that is probably why, is they just didn't know how it would perform. And, but I also think at the end of the day, the fact that it's $30 meant that it could make the top 10 in Steam. That's probably is why that it was in there. I'm sure it could have made it there with the $60 price tag, but I think a $30 price tag meant that was way more of an assured thing. And especially when it's on Game Pass as well, it's interesting that the dynamics of the economics of pricing a game when it's very readily available through subscription services. There's probably not enough data out there for there to be like a surefire pricing plan.
I think you're like it felt like they were erring on the side of let's make it feel like a really good deal rather than let's see what we can get away with. And that's what I'm so used to, at least companies trying to see what they can get away with. This felt weird. Not that like I'm sitting here ready to like praise them for, you know, letting me buy a product like that. So
yeah, but
thank you for letting me spend the money on your but still it feels a little off. But
the state of gaming feels so in a ways dystopian that this very minute thing felt like the biggest breath of fresh air, where I was like ready to be like, Tango Gameworks is the best studio on the planet. Microsoft is the world's best publisher. Everything is good with the world. Like, we're so desperate for there to be just like a solid hit. Everyone loves it.
It feels different. It's like even like even companies that are having like solid hit after solid hit, like PlayStation. It's like, yeah, but they're all the same. It's like you're complaining because there are all these $100 million giant blockbusters that are impossible to create, and you're complaining. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I want something a little bit different. Well, here you go. Here's something a little different. And it did feel like a breath of fresh air.
A little different is good.
All right. Small breaking story. Apex Legends is getting Team Deathmatch here in the next week or so. They just launched the new trailer for the new season, and it does confirm Team Deathmatch will be in there. Of course, when I talked about what was happening with Titanfall Legends, the thing there was that they were going to try to make Titanfall Legends another part of the overall Apex universal launcher, and it was going to have stuff like Team Deathmatch, and they were planning other sort of shooter modes that they were going to put in there as well. So it's like, and then we'll just eventually slot in Titanfall Legends, and it will just keep this thing growing and growing. Well, Team Deathmatch is happening, Titanfall Legends won't. You have any interest in a team deathmatch mode in Apex Legends?
It's one of those things where it's hard to get back into a game that I already spent so much time with. When the Arenas mode came out, I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to get back in Apex Legends. The first 6 months Apex Legends came out, I made it my game. I was so desperate for a first-person shooter battle royale. Not to say that the game isn't amazing, it is, but like it consumed so much of my multiplayer time this first 6 months. But once you're out of something, it's so hard to come back in. I am very interested to see the path that this game and franchise takes. As you mentioned when talking about Titanfall Legends last week, Apex Legends is the iconic brand now. It is far surpassed Titanfall. And, with them, I bet you when they decided to kill Titanfall Legends, it wasn't just one of the reasons was probably because, we don't want to muddy the waters. Like,
yes, that's specifically why they wouldn't do a Titanfall 3, because a separate Titanfall 3 that was going to sell as its own product, because that would have really muddied the waters. They never even really considered that. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think that Apex Legends needs to continue doing its own thing. I think including very basic ideas like a team deathmatch is very smart to kind of expand what that game can be, especially as we're seeing how competitive this landscape is being. I'm very curious to see how it will play. I will probably play a match or two. Do I see myself now jumping all the way back into Apex Legends and it being what it was in 2019 when it released? No. But I do think it is the smart thing for them to do to keep, because it's one of the few live service games, battle royale games in the space that has succeeded. And I think that these are kind of no-brainer ideas. Let's just get the base gameplay modes that people love in here, and there's just more value there for them.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel, and I probably will check it out. I never could quite get in. Mostly I like to play battle royale games primarily by myself. That's why I was such a PUBG fan over anything else. That was like a big scary game because it's so tense when you're playing by yourself.
Oh my god,
So it's like when I like all the other ones, and especially like when I'm playing with other people. Obviously, Fortnite's an improvement there, but I just could never. I never had the time to like learn the ins and outs of the Apex Legends characters. I think with Team Deathmatch, the stakes are so much lower. I would feel okay throwing myself in there and seeing how it goes. But yeah, it's a different move. I'm almost like, okay, now are they going to try to do like an extraction shooter next? Are they going to try to make their own Tarkov? Like that seems possible. That seems likely even. We'll see.
Yeah. Oh wow, extraction shooters. What an interesting subgenre.
Yes, it's on its way to taking everything over for sure. All right, let's move along. U.S. court dismissed Joy-Con drift lawsuit. This comes from Marie de Lasandre at gi.biz. A U.S. judge has dismissed a Joy-Con drift lawsuit against Nintendo. The legal action was initially filed in October 2020 by parents on behalf of their 10-year-old son. At the time, they explained that the drift on the Nintendo Switch Joy-Con became so pronounced that the controllers became inoperable for general gameplay use. As reported by Eurogamer, the lawsuit was actually dismissed last November, with the judge arguing that the user agreement was between Nintendo and the parents who bought the console and not the child, who is a minor. The quote is, the panel necessarily found that the parents were the only owners of the console, U.S. District Judge William Alsup said in his decision. Plaintiffs' gifting and disaffirmation arguments were carefully read and considered, and the arbitration panel ultimately concluded minors are not parties to the EULA, but the parents are. So basically the argument here is that, and if it sounds like this is technical stuff, it is. This is a technicality. The issue is that the parents were arguing that the child could not agree to the EULA, which basically says you can't sue Nintendo over these things because they're children. And then the court's like, well, you bought it. You're actually the one who agrees to the EULA. The child has nothing to do with it, even if you gift it to them. So you can't sue Nintendo. Like, you would have to go through their arbitration stuff or whatever. So this case is dismissed, and you can't actually bring it. It has nothing to do with the terms or the issues with Joy-Con drift. It doesn't address that in any way. This is just a technicality, but it continues to be frustrating. This is what happens with court cases, right? This is why they're so rare. It's why people usually don't bring court cases, because you end up wasting time and money, right?
Yeah. Yeah, any excuse that the judicial system will find to not actually make any progress or make any change. And I mean, the other thing is like things like this set precedent, right? So you have to make sure that everything is airtight. The other thing that I'm coming from is like, I know everyone hates on Joy-Con drift, and in my experience, the Joy-Cons are most susceptible to drifting, but this isn't a Nintendo exclusive problem.
No.
My Elite controller has drift. One of my DualSense controllers has drift as well. It's an industrial problem. It seems to be a problem that has only existed in the last generation or so. I don't know where the drift problems were beforehand. And obviously there are more expensive remedies, right? Like, that's the reason why these issues happen, is this is the cheapest way to make thumbsticks. And, so I think it's also, even if there wasn't this technicality, I think it would be very hard to nail Nintendo for Joy-Con drift from a legal standpoint, because again, it sets precedent. Now you have to go after Microsoft. Now you have to go after, PlayStation. We're going to have a story coming up about the Activision deal, talking about the European Commission, all that jazz. That is probably where you're going to be likely see an actual change to an industry. There has to be an industry broad standard of you can't sell faulty controllers that after a year are going to start having drift.
Yep.
It would probably come from there versus somewhere in the US courts. But yeah, it's an industry-wide issue that even without this technicality of, the child didn't buy the game, it's going to be very hard to nail Nintendo for Joy-Con drift, because every company is susceptible to it. Anyone that makes a controller has that issue pretty much, unless they specifically are we make driftless controllers that cost way more money because the thumbsticks are electromagnets or whatever.
Yeah, the Hall effect sensors that are out there. I got a controller over there with a Hall effect sensor, and it's pretty cool.
Real quick, Jodo Dancer 2599 says he has never owned an N64. That is correct. I never have owned an N64. So I have no memory of that. N64 controllers, by my eyes, didn't just have drift. It was just their thumbsticks broke, right? It wasn't even drift. It was they just didn't work.
Yeah, but I definitely had a couple controllers where the thumbsticks eventually were just nope, I've had enough. Absolutely. I think you're right. This just feels like a more pronounced thing. I think obviously the parts that they're using are getting cheaper. They went to the lowest common denominator over time, and now that's the only manufacturer of these traditional mechanical stick mechanisms. Mm-hmm. But I think also we might just be playing more games as well. Broadly, I think more people are playing more games more frequently, and so the problem becomes more pronounced in that sort of law of large numbers sort of way. But yeah, it's still there's an answer to it. It sucks. I think my solution here going forward is, if someone puts out a Hall effect option, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go try to buy that and only that and not worry about any of these other sticks. Although I haven't had too much bad luck with Drift yet, personally. But the thing is, I end up getting like controllers for review, so I only use the controller for a little bit before moving on. That's probably what it is.
I have so many regular like Series S X controllers.
Same.
Like I can play it for a day and then it will not come back in the rotation until like weeks later. So I'm very lucky from that standpoint. And I agree with, I think, what you were saying. I'm gaming way more than I did. I also like my skills have increased since like the eras of yesteryear. So I'm noticing like, I have a little bit of drift as well. So
tiny imperfections are more noticeable. Yeah, I think people are more savvy too. That's another really good point. It is just, and these controllers are a huge profit margin product for these companies, and they really don't want to mess with that. So any chance they get to fight these things and say, no, we want to keep making them for as cheap as possible and selling them for $70, $80, $90, we're going to keep doing it.
And that's the thing is when I got Joy-Con drift, I just was like, screw it. I'm just going to buy more Joy-Cons. Like I'm not going to, again, this comes down to like time versus money. I was like, I do not want to waste forever mailing my Joy-Cons to Nintendo and all this stuff. I'm just going to go to GameStop and buy another pair. So I'm part of the problem, Jeff, is what I'm saying.
Oh, always. Same here. Hypocrite to the end over here. EU issues Microsoft with antitrust warning over Activision Blizzard acquisition. This comes from James Batchelor at GamesIndustry.biz. Microsoft has been issued with a formal antitrust warning from the European Union considering its proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Sources told Politico a statement of objections was sent to Xbox firm on Tuesday, in which the European Commission's antitrust enforcers detailed their concerns over the $69 billion deal. This has been rumored to be coming. Here it is. This is like part of the process now. Yep. Microsoft wants to fight it. They weren't going to be given the opportunity to like make concessions to the EC, the European Commission, until this came through. So now maybe this means some movement will happen on that front, but it's still like, okay, yeah, we're still waiting for something to sort of get dislodged here, because it continues to be Microsoft's not backing down. These regulators keep saying we have problems, we have concerns, and so okay, well, what's next? Well, no, they're still going through sort of the paperwork almost before we can even get to that step. I'm a bit over this story. I'm kind of like, all right, someone just make a move
Who
here.
isn't?
Yeah, exactly. But do you think that this thing's going to go anywhere anytime soon?
It's hard to say because I'm, first off, not a legal expert. I also think that they've run into way more trouble with, not to say that like this deal isn't going to happen, but there's been way more roadblocks in the way than I think anyone suspected. I really think everyone thought no one's going to do anything about this. Not to say that there needs to be or whatever. It's a very complicated issue. I think that like, Sony, while they make certain valid points about like their issues with it, I also think that some of those are completely unjustified and completely, simply just Sony trying to get one up. So when Phil Spencer comes back and he says something like Sony wants to grow by making Microsoft small, I'm like, well, I agree and I don't agree at the same time. It's so complicated. I think that they're running into a ton of issues. I think it will eventually happen. I don't think, though, that this is going to be settled. Like, we're probably looking at the earliest 2024 by this deal going through, if it does.
It feels that way right now, because it's just like if it was just one of these three big regulators, the CMA in the UK, the EC in the European Union, and the FTC in America, if it was just one of them, maybe this could still happen this year. But all three, get like sort of coming up with like first getting them all to the table, and then getting them all to be willing to agree to the same set of concessions, it's going to be a real headache. And I still think Microsoft's going to try to make it happen.
Of course.
But these regulators are going to want to drag it out, because if Microsoft does back off, that is a PR win for these regulators, which is what they want. They are really regretting the series of acquisitions they let companies like Facebook and Microsoft and Apple make over time. And they're just like, okay, can we sort of maybe draw the line here? And it's a weird one to draw the line on, because the video game industry is so much different than everything. I mean, even like the VR space, like the FTC just lost that case with Meta and Facebook buying that VR firm, and they're like, well, they're going to control the VR, and it's like The courts didn't care, so they lost that. They're on a losing streak in terms of when they bring these things to court, but the FTC knows that, doesn't care. They are trying to run out the clock, and it seems like, okay, well, I get that you don't, that something this big you have to do something about. It's just, we continue to like be stuck in a situation where it's like, well, no one knows what's going to happen because this really hasn't happened before, and you guys are sort of figuring it out on the fly, you guys being the regulators. And so, okay, well, I mean, the next step now is to get to the table, and let's see if that even happens, or if Microsoft does suddenly change its tune and decide it's going to back out.
Yeah, I don't think they will back out. Again, we're about to have another story about Activision. I also don't think Activision, I think, needs this deal.
Yeah.
In a big way. So I think that they are very desperate to have it happen. I think Microsoft kind of has something to prove at this point as well. So I think like they're not gonna back down. I will say I'm less certain about the deal going through. I was almost assured that it was going to go through when it was announced, but I mean, it's that thing, you know, people in chat being like, can we talk about this when there's something to talk about? It's one of those things where it's like, I wish we could, but also it is so unprecedented. What does the video game landscape look after this? Yeah. Like, it's something where there is nothing to talk about, but there's so much to talk about at the same time.
And it's like, so Eamon Goldie says, I wish they would have done something about T-Mobile and Sprint. Like that, yeah, that was the one to do. There was four mobile carriers in the United States, and then suddenly there was 3. And it's like, man, that's a big difference. Video games, like the next big video game company or the next big video game is not going to come from one of these companies. It's going to come from some weirdo off Steam. And it's like, it's so dynamic. Trying to like equate it to that stuff is so much different. Rich Bad at Game on Twitch on the Twitch chat says the contractual merger deadline is the 18th of July, 2023. We've talked about this before. Yes, it is. And if it goes past that date, Microsoft owes them. Well, you know, they technically owe them
they owe them some money,
$2 billion. That it doesn't matter because they'll renegotiate. This happens all the time.
They'll just push that
deadline. They'll push the date. They'll make a new date. They're like, listen, circumstances have changed. We agree that we want this to go through, so let's just make a new amicable date that's down the line. Yeah. And so, yes, technically it does matter. And then in reality, it's not going to matter because they'll just make a new date.
The deadline was more like if there were internal issues between Activision and Microsoft on how the deal would go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And wasn't actually trying to make it happen. Like, oh, we say we're going to make it happen, and like, we don't know. Activision's like, if we agree to make this happen, you need to make all the best efforts to actually see it through because we're putting ourselves on the line here. And so you're going to owe us a bunch of money if it doesn't happen by this date. That's why that happens. And it's like, well, Microsoft's clearly making all the efforts, so they will be willing to renegotiate. Like that's,
Activision won't try and enforce that deadline because they see they see how committed Microsoft is, and they'll just end up pushing it down. They'll just throw it. They'll just make it a year. They'll just add a year, guaranteed. You guys can go yell at me at Twitter. They'll renegotiate 18th of July 2024.
Yes,
and they'll push that if they need to as well. These guys are determined to make this deal.
This story comes from Ethan Gach at Kotaku. Activision did nothing wrong, but will pay $35 million settlement. Activision Blizzard will pay the Securities Exchange Commission $35 million to settle charges that it violated workplace misconduct reporting rules and whistleblower protections. The Call of Duty publisher admits no wrongdoing in the case, which comes less than 2 years after a bombshell lawsuit by California regulators alleged years of sexual harassment and discrimination at the company. Tom, I'm always just giving people money when I don't do anything wrong. That's my whole thing. So here, I have a couple of million. I didn't do anything wrong. Here's $1 million. Today's SEC order states that Activision Blizzard lacked controls and procedures to properly collect and analyze employee complaints of workplace misconduct. As a result, the company's management lacked sufficient information to even know if there were certain issues at the company that required public disclosure to investors. This is why this is an SEC deal. The thing is, the SEC brought this to say, hey, you did not disclose to your investors the reality at the ground. You didn't even know if there were actually issues that you would need to disclose to your investors in order to be honest with them if they are spending money, as is the rules of the SEC. On top of that, there was other things like... let's see, I'm trying to find the other. The SEC orders find that the Activision Blizzard failed to implement necessary controls to collect and review employee complaints about workplace misconduct, which left it without the means to determine the larger issues within the company. Well, in the end, and while the company didn't admit to the charges, it did agree to pay the cease and desist order. We are pleased to have amicably resolved the matter, Activision Media Relations VP Joe Christinat told Kotaku in a statement. As the order recognizes, we have enhanced our disclosure processes with regards to workplace reporting and updated our separation contract language. That was the other thing. The separation contract language was like, hey, if the SEC reaches out to you and says anything, you have to come report it to us. And that's against whistleblower regulations. So there is like the reporting to your investors side of things, and then there's violating whistleblower regulations. And they are not guilty of both, but they're paying $35 million. Just more Activision shit, right?
Just more Activision shit. I mean, this is probably this is a large reason, I think, also why they want the Microsoft deal to happen, is because this doesn't become their problem anymore. Once that happens, it becomes Microsoft's problem. And it's clear that like Activision has a lot of skeletons in the closet when it comes to how it operates. But at the same time, this is not something that is exclusive to Activision Blizzard. There are tons of companies that are constantly breaking the law in this way, and they have the money to just, here, we're just going to make this disappear. At the end of the day, the story with the Microsoft deal, the people to think about are the people that are making these products, the developers and people on the ground who are caught up in this. Hopefully, I mean, this is so complicated because, again, Activision Blizzard could be a part of Microsoft in the next year, and their whole company structure could completely change overnight. But hopefully, because they have to make changes, right? They have to pay the money, and they have to make changes to like contracts and stuff like that. Hopefully this is a little bit of a fix for the people who are still with Activision Blizzard regarding like, everything to do with the whistleblower elements to it. Hopefully it makes people feel a little bit safer. But yeah, I mean, it's this is a problem with the entire corporate echelon. Absolutely. In America.
Yeah. Let's hit these last couple of stories here.
Let's do it.
PlayStation 5 sales in the UK show that the stock shortage is over. This comes from a tweet from Chris Dring. PS5 stock coming thick and fast. In January in the UK, PS5 sales were up over 98% compared with the same month last year. This week, God of War Ragnarok is number 2 in the charts, and that's due to rising stock levels. Chris, what are you doing there? Chris, thick and fast, huh? That's how the PS5 stock is coming. Big ropey availability of PS5. Sheesh.
I'll tell you this, Jeff. I've got some on the grounds reporting that I'm bringing to the show right now.
Please hit me with it.
I went to this is a great plug for the GameSpot TikTok that I manage. Go to GameSpot.com is the handle on TikTok if you're on TikTok. I went into New York City because Jim Ryan's like, oh, the shortage is over. I went into New York. I went to a bunch of stores to find out if they had PS5 stock, and only one did not.
Whoa,
everywhere.
Wow.
Everywhere had consoles in stock that I went to, which I was shocked by.
That is shocking, yes.
Yeah. So thick and fast might actually be the best way to describe it, because it went from, it does feel like overnight, nowhere had stock, and now there are stuff. Obviously, it's New York City, which is an outlier in both regards. It can mean that if there is stock in New York, there's stock everywhere, and sometimes it can mean the opposite of that. But I do think that they aren't just lying. No. When they say there's PS5s, I do think that there is some merit to that being. I mean,
98% year over year like growth in terms of sales. Clearly, they have solved something.
They have some consoles to sell you.
And again, like I go back to this every time, but we should have known they solved it when they're like, we got to raise the price now. We got to raise the price now before they're available everywhere. So let's raise the price while we still can, and then put a bunch out there, and let's go. And that's what happened.
And kill game collection.
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Make some shit. We got to save money where we can, make money where we can. And let's basically treat this like the real launch of the PS5 now. And that definitely is what it feels like.
And I would recommend to people, I mean, it depending on the region, you might already have had a price increase, but if you're in the US and you've been waiting on a PS5, 100%, if you can buy one now, do it now, because as Jeff said, this is only going to give them an excuse to raise the price in the US. I don't think that outside of like MetaQuest 2, has there ever been a price increase in the US for a system?
The only comparison I can ever point to is the OLED Nintendo Switch came out at a higher price than the launch price of the original Switch, and the Switch never got a price decrease. So that was kind of like half of a price increase, but not in the way that the PS5 was just like, no, the same thing just costs more now.
Yeah, so I would say that this is the sweet spot of availability, and also the price hasn't increased. I think there's a chance they could set a precedent, which is a little scary, but yeah, just a PSA for folks out there.
All right, let's get to the Hogwarts Legacy stuff. Avalanche reflects its support for the trans community in Hogwarts Legacy. This comes from Alberto Garrido at Game Reactor. If you've been following the development and news about Hogwarts Legacy over the last few months, you will have seen that there is a section of the gaming community calling for a boycott of the game, due to the comments that, for years, the author and owner of the license, J.K. Rowling, has made against the trans community. A very uncomfortable situation even within Hogwarts Legacy's own studio, Avalanche Software. Some developers already took a stand against these comments, but now that the game is about to be released, it seems that they have taken their ideas to the next level and have made Hogwarts Legacy a much more inclusive game with the collective and gender-fluid people. For starters, there are the character editor options themselves, as well as choosing the appearance of your avatar. You can assign it a male or female voice of your choosing, and equally, we can define how we are referred to, whether as a witch or a wizard. And then there is the case of Sirona Ryan. Sirona is a secondary character who we will see in several missions throughout the game, and who is the current owner of the 3 broomsticks in Hogsmeade. She is a strong-willed woman who defends both her bar and her customers with determination, and in addition to the fact that she is a trans woman. More than just another NPC, Sirona is an important part of the main plot of the game, as well as several side quests. Now, we'll get to the reaction of the game itself, the reviews here in a second. I think that this is nice. This is nice. It's, for one thing, trans representation in any game is nice. I don't think that for many people this feels like this is in any way undoes the criticisms that people have for J.K. Rowling. Those things were always separate than what the game was itself. No one calling for the boycott of the game was actually playing the game or thinking about it in those terms. They're like, no, we are concerned about J.K. Rowling benefiting from this game, and even if the game does have good representation, that has nothing to do with it. Now, for me, this has always been like it's so fraught, because when you begin calling for a boycott, my immediate reaction is that is a capitalist lie. The idea of a boycott, they almost never work, and they claim that the cure to what is wrong with the system lies within the system itself. If you don't like it, don't buy it. Oh, and if you really don't like it, convince others to don't buy it. It's not going to work. It is. Yeah. First of all, she's already rich. You're never going to hurt her. And if it's about hurting her where it hurts, you were never going to be able to hurt her with a boycott. It was never, ever going to work. This game was already a success. That's not to say don't ever try to call for a boycott. If they don't work until they do work, right? But my reaction is, I don't believe that the solution to a capitalist system is like, let's just our money is is how we vote. That's not the truth. You can actually vote in a democratic society, and you can actually voice your opinions in a free society where you can have criticism of things, and that can actually accomplish, in my opinion, way more than a boycott. We've seen it over and over, right? People saying that they're going to not buy something and try to convince their friends not to buy something. Human beings are just animals, and we will just, if the pellet, it tastes good, but a lot of people are just going to take it, even if they say they're not going to. But what can have an effect is a swelling sort of a reaction, people criticizing things, and we've seen that work. I mean, I'll tell you, if you look at J.K. Rowling, what does hurt her? Well, she's never once mentioned her money, her pocketbook has actually been hurt. But whenever people do criticize her, she reacts very poorly to that. Yeah. And I think if you want to hit her where it hurts, just
make her life a living hell for the rest of it.
Continue speaking out, keep getting louder. I know it can feel like it doesn't have an effect, and but I'll say, like, the boycott's not going to have an effect, and I don't want people to take that as some evaluation of your worth as a person. Like, it hurts my feelings that people are going to go out and buy this game. Your feelings, I understand your feelings getting hurt there, and I like, that's why I'm like, I'm probably not going to play this game because I don't want to hurt my friends' feelings. But
exactly,
it doesn't reflect on your value and your worth. And but your voice can still come out and still do something about this if you want. I don't know. How do you feel about this, Tom?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you in the sense that like there was no way in which like this game is like going to completely fail. It's going to tragically sell very well. And I think that the most important point of everything that you've said is like people tie their self-worth to the success of something like a boycott. And that's where it's really tragic, because, you know, a lot of the people probably doing that are people who are a part of this community, a part of the community most affected, that don't want the proliferation of this woman's work out there. And so it's like an extra like layer, an extra sting of like, I failed. And like that's the heartbreaking thing, is like you have to try and detach from that. I think that what you're saying too is like, keep openly criticizing. She will be rich until the end of time. I don't think there's any change to that. But, you know, people were looking into like the success of the franchise over the last few years, and there has been a dip. And so it's not really, I think, about like trying to boycott one thing. It is about that vocal criticism. Take a stand for what you believe, take a stand for the marginalized people affected by her words. And there will be, it's kind of that thing where it sucks I never want to watch those movies again. I never want to pick up the book again. I have so little interest in playing this that it will turn people off. And I think that there has been that. And that's a huge achievement. And I think like that is the route to go. And it's more like a death by 1,000 cuts rather than we need to make sure this game fails, because that ain't going to happen. This is probably going to be the most successful Harry Potter thing since the original movies came out. But, you know, no one's going to go see Fantastic Beasts 4, you know, like no one saw the third one. So, you know, hopefully, you know, I think over time the brand will be diminished. And it will be a very gradual thing.
Right? Because those are the things that she's most involved in, those movies. And her like reaction to her is poisoning those films. They're like the whole, I'll never get over, like when I saw the first one, I like couldn't understand what was happening. I was only half paying attention because it was so boring. I never saw the second one, but apparently the whole Fantastic Beasts the whole premise is that here's why wizards couldn't stop Hitler. I'm like, what? What? And it's like, no, because people criticized her. Well, if wizards were real, why didn't they stop Hitler? And she's, well, I'll fucking make some movies about that. Wait, what? No, we didn't actually want you to do that. That's crazy. But that's how like poisoned she is against criticism against her. And it's like, so to me, she's already on like, it feels like she's being defeated right now. To me, that's what it feels like. But if you only stack it up in terms of the score of how much money is being made, well, fuck yeah, no, of course we're not like. No, we're going to lose that. We already lost that. Like that's how it works. We can't stop Elon Musk. Can't stop Jeff Bezos. We lost those. But if we can pull them down in any way, it is in terms of their estimation as a person. And those battles we slowly can win. And
it's beyond just the individuals, right? It's about like a continued like stand against the institutions that prop up problematic people who have contributed things that bring like monetary value to companies. And it's way the fight is against, I think, those pillars versus like any one individual. You have to change the system. The system has to change before you can like take someone, like you can't play by the rules of the system in order to take someone down. So yeah, I definitely agree in those areas. I do want to bring up real quick regarding the fact that there's an inclusion to a trans character. The Gamer had a story this morning that basically spoke about it. I don't know if you saw this, but you know, it sounds like from Stephanie Sterling and Liam Robertson, who spoke to people on the development side, that the inclusion of the transgender character was, you know, very transparently in response to the fact the J.K. Rowling thing. And this quote right here says, this is from the Gamer. It says, Robertson says that he has heard this too, suggesting that the character was only added following the initial backlash towards the game. Quote, there was apparently some trans representation added after some of the initial controversy, he says. I don't know how it appears in the final product, but one of the sources I talked to described it as performative bullshit. So I think there's obviously something there to keep aware, where it's like, great that there is a trans character, but also they probably are only in the game because of everything surrounding it. So, and
again, but that's like, it goes back to like it's operating under this system, right? And it's like if you look at it, everything through that, it's what is the reason for doing this? Well, it benefits in this other way because it releases some of the perceived pressure on them in regards to this criticism. But it's my reaction to that is always, but we all operate under this system. So at a certain point, if things are happening for bad reasons, can they still have a positive effect? I don't know. With Harry Potter, I feel like the salt or the earth has been salted. So I don't know. But at the very least, it does sound like the actual, even if I do definitely agree, it's performative. But even still, it seems like the character at least
100.
Well, articulated and things like that. So there's something there.
I completely agree. I think that it's better that the character is in there than them not trying to address it at all. It's complicated. It's and it exists in a very complicated system that is the problem more so than the individual product.
All right. I'll just last thing there. I don't believe that J.K. Rowling actually cares that much about women's rights, because no one who actually cares about that stuff would use it to hurt someone else.
I completely agree with you.
You can always tell when someone's like fueled by hate if they are using another minority group to attack a different minority group. See right through it every time. All right, the Hogwarts Legacy review roundup. It's got an 86 for the PS5 version on Metacritic, which is the version with the most reviews. IGN's Travis Northrop gave it a 9. In nearly every way, Hogwarts Legacy is the Harry Potter RPG I've always wanted to play. Push Square's Liam Croft gave it an 8 out of 10. Hogwarts Legacy has turned the hopes and dreams of Harry Potter fans into reality. VGC gave it 4 stars. It's Jordan Midler. Hogwarts Legacy brilliantly captures the magic of the Harry Potter world with its beautiful open world, engaging characters, and exciting combat. While the open world elements of the game make it feel more dated than we'd have liked, it's otherwise the best wizarding world has been in a video game. And then Games Radar's Josh West gave it 3.5 stars. It's a solid first attempt. If Avalanche can be accused of anything, it's that the studio has tried to do too much all at once. Something was always going to give between the massive open world, the messy RPG economy, exciting action combat, and adventure story that wants to cast you as the hero with homework due on Monday. But you could see a world in which the sequel sands down some of the rougher edges and settles into a finer balance between the demands of an interactive experience and the lore of the wizarding world. All right, let's get to this poll from Friday. Do you believe that The Day Before is a real video game? Did you see this, Tom? Did you see the stuff happening around this game The Day Before?
Jeff, there's a psyop happening, and it's called The Day Before.
What is this? This thing is actually driving me crazy, because every time I see something else from it, it's like, here's every screenshot, and here's the game that they just completely stole it from. And one of them was SnowRunner, which is one of my favorite games of all time. I'm like, you fucking steal it from SnowRunner? What is even happening? This one definitely feels like it was an operation to see like what humans will put up with in terms of marketing or something.
I think that every time I look at gameplay, and another plug, I do the news show for GameSpot. So go to youtube.com/GameSpot to see more of me if you want to. But we were covering this game, and I was looking at gameplay, and I was like, this doesn't look like someone is playing it. But that being said, I can say that probably a lot about marketing of certain games. They're playing it under certain conditions. I also learned of something, and maybe you know more about this, but like they play at half speed and then they speed up afterwards to get like the precise like movements that they want and stuff like that.
I'm going to ask about that. I've never heard that, but that sounds like possible.
Aaron Sampson brought it up when I brought up the fact, because I posted in the GameSpot Slack. I was like, is it just me, or does it look like that this is not someone playing this game? And Aaron brought up the fact is like that they use a lot of like development tools to make it so that they get the precise look. So I'm not certain for sure, but I tell you this, when I see gameplay of this game, it really doesn't look like someone is playing it. That being said, I have been fed so much about this game not being real that like I can't disseminate what I'm really feeling, I mean, look, it's going to be a believe it when I see it kind of thing.
Right.
I think that. Yeah,
20.5% say yes. So you might have some people there with you. They're like, yes. I think people are like iffy on the definition of real game. I think someone has worked on something here, and I think that's what's in the video. Or else I think it would have looked better if what they were showing wasn't at least what they think they're working on. In terms of it being what they've promised, in terms of it having anything to do with what we've seen before. And like whether it will actually really come out, I'm like, this is in the realm of abandoned, right? It is in that space where there are big promises being made, and I don't know if there's anything behind the curtain. It could just be like a man like selling us something again. 79.5% say no. So there we go.
Yeah, I think in the climate of a post-abandoned world, everything we dealt with last year, like that definitely like plays into it. Yeah, I agree. I think something will come out eventually. I think that it won't be what the people who are really hoping from this game will get.
I'm going to put up the new poll. In the meantime, Tom, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what's going on with you this week, all that stuff.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Caswell, a.k.a. Great Britom. You can find me in various locations all over the internet under that handle. But I run GameSpot's TikTok. So if you're on TikTok, make sure to go follow GameSpot. I do a lot of content over there. I also am on the YouTube side of things. I mostly host the news, but I do a lot of other video work with them as well. If you like Giant Bomb, you will like my podcast, Unranked. We've been running it for 6 years, so there's a lot of content to catch up on. But I saw I think it was a Hard Times article that was like 2-year-long gaming podcast devolved into 2 hours of inside jokes among 4 men, and I was like, oh my god, you nailed our podcast to a T. Like this week, the main topic of discussion on our gaming podcast: which is the biggest animal you could fight? So definitely go check that out and check out all the GameSpot stuff as well. And you can find me on social under Great Britom. But yeah, that's
Panda
me.
Bear.
So we bring it up. Turns out, if you fight a panda, it will fuck you up.
Well, listen, I never said I would have the knowledge to know what would happen next, but it's the biggest one I could technically fight. I'll lose. I'm sure it would fuck me up. Absolutely, man.
Someone said a giraffe, and like we were like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. But if they get the neck in there, one swing of the neck
is going to totally ruin everything. Just it's going to liquefy your insides. Yeah. Will you be upset if Dragon Age 4 has real-time action style God of War 2018 combat? That's the new poll for Wednesday, actually. So look out for that. Tomorrow, no game this morning because it's a Giant Bombcast day. Tune in for that. We'll be live here where you find it. We'll be on your feeds, all that. But I'll be back Wednesday, likely with Lucy. Until then, I want to say, Tom, thank you so much for spending today with me talking about video games. I really appreciate it, man. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to the next time.
There will be a next time. And everyone, thank you for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself and goodbye.
Have a good day, guys.